And now I've got the pleasure of introducing Denise. Denise LaBarre is an adoptee and a healing catalyst. She's been systematically listening to bodies using her hands and intuition since she was 7 years old. I have to add a personal piece here. Denise was born here at the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, a place for adoption, and she found her birth mother in 1986 with my help 2 years before I even started Adoption Network Cleveland. So we go way back and had lost touch for many years, and not too long ago reconnected. She found her birth mother at that point and found her birth father 4 years ago. Denise studied psychology and languages. After university, she went to massage school in San Francisco. She's worked with more bodies as a as she worked with more bodies as a massage therapist, Denise realized that she was relearning the universal language of the body and translating it for minds that had gotten socialized out of the habit of listening. She was becoming a body-mind translator or a body whisperer. I love that. Her book, Issues in Your Tissues, Heal Body and Emotion from the Inside Out, distills 4 decades of experience and insights. I will be posting Denise's website in the chat, and you can see the information on her book there. Her book, Teaching and Private Sessions on Maui, where she now lives, focus on helping people release the issues in their tissues and regain health, resilience, and ease in their body. And with that, I give you Denise.
Thank you, Betsy. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to you all. I appreciate seeing your faces. If you're willing to show them, I'd love to see it. Speaking to the Adoption Network of Cleveland feels like coming home in a deep way. As Betsy said, my adoption parents were from Cleveland, and they raised me to be a plain dealer. Tonight, we're going to talk to you about your body and the emotional energy that either runs through it or gets stuck. As she said, I have a background in psychology, and I've learned many different healing modalities, but my approach is first and foremost intuitive, feeling first, body-centered. From my perspective, knowing the name of something, even having the understanding to talk about it accurately, doesn't heal the problem. For true healing to happen, there has to be an energetic movement, a visceral, tangible experience of some kind, even if it's not describable in words. So, for example, have you ever wound up at the end of the day with your body feeling drained, your neck and shoulders tight and sore, and your head feeling like it's going to explode? Any nods? Well, it has been drained, just upward. It's like putting your finger at the bottom of a straw to hold liquid up into it. Your neck and shoulder muscles act like that finger holding energy in your head area all day long to keep your energy there so you can concentrate on your work. It's effective in the short term, but causes problems over time. And it's an unbalanced cycle. Up, up is not a cycle. Sadly, that's become the norm for us industrialized humans to go through life with our energy locked up in our heads. Our society is geared toward being rational and productive. We don't breathe well, and we're taught to stuff down our emotions if they're at all difficult or uncomfortable. This is slowly changing, but most of us adults need to learn, and this could be relearning, how to be relaxed and open in our bodies and comfortable with our emotions. Whatever your health and stress level, you can still reclaim the aliveness you were born to enjoy. And getting comfortable with emotional energy flowing through your body is the key to that wellness, from my perspective. If you watch an infant or a toddler breathe, you'll see how our bodies are designed to breathe. The belly puffs out on the inhale, and breath energy flows easily, circulating throughout the body. This would continue through our whole lives if our acculturation didn't have us constantly shut down our natural impulses and set our focus in our minds most of the time. Maybe at some point when you were a toddler, someone came along and called you fat. You might not even have known what that was, but you could feel it was something you didn't want. So you adjusted by holding your belly in, and you wanted to fit in with your parents and big kids and society. So you learn to suck in your belly and breathe shallowly like they do. And then you add scary or traumatic events that increase your physical holding and shut down, and you start to see how stress and disease patterns begin. Flowing energy equals health. Shut down or constricted flow means the opposite. The body's blood, lymph, and energy flow very much like water, in cycles, as much in as out, as much up as down, so the cycle can continue. And stress of any kind stops that natural flow. When we're stressed, when we face a threat, we contract. It's a wired in survival mechanism. In the animal world, stress equals being attacked. A predator wants to eat you. You freeze, run away, or fight if there's no other option. If you survive, you reset your nervous system by flapping your wings or shaking it off, literally, and you deepen and slow your breathing. That resets your nervous system. But in the human world, most of the stress and threats we face are not life-threatening, but we go through the same physical threat response just the same. We lock down, hold our breath, blood is diverted away from our digestion into the limbs, and we go into some version of the fight, flight, freeze response. But the trouble is that we don't do a reset process afterwards. I mean, I love the idea of people in offices that have had a tense phone call and they just stand up and flap their arms or do something to shake it off. Our bodies have 12 ways to release stuck energy: tears, shivering, sneezing, farting, orgasm, sweating, a cry, urination, defecation. Something has to flow out, even if it's like this, that's outflow. The physical movement has to happen, even if it's subtle, maybe just a little bit. Studies show that pure anger, when it first blasts through you, lasts at most 90 seconds. Anything longer than that, and you've attached a story to it or holding on to it in some way. Over time, it grows energetic barbs and catches or attracts more of the same energetic vibration. It accumulates. We go from meeting to meeting or problem to crisis without that crucial rebalancing step in between or a pause to regroup. The constriction gets worse and eventually lack of flow becomes the normal state. You're familiar with the health consequences that come with shutdown. We all are, unfortunately. So I'm going to show you how you can reverse a stress response and reset your nervous system. This is the audience participation part of our workshop here. So sit back. Let me see if I can see everybody. Sit back, get comfortable. If you've got a tight waistband or a tight belt, loosen that. And stand up if that works better for you. Now close your eyes for a moment. Take a breath in. How far did that go? Into the top of your chest, a little further down? Put one hand on your tummy and keep your eyes closed. Deepen your breathing and try puffing out your belly a little bit as you take a breath in. This is you, Betsy, you and Julius too. Think back to when you were a little kid and you were discovering all the cool and amazing things your body could do. They look different, maybe like a pregnant lady or it's like someone with a big belly. Put your hand on your belly, puff it out with or without air, smile, and say, look, Mom, I'm fat. This is play. Nobody's gaining any weight here. It's just your diaphragm pushing your intestines out of the way so your lungs can fill with air. And so let me just make sure I'm seeing everybody. Are we feeling that a little bit? Nod. Okay. So this, I'm going to stand a little bit. Let's see. This is a full breath. There's movement here. It takes time to complete a full inhale and exhale. Typically, we rush this, and that raises our stress levels. This whole thing is a feedback loop that you're either turning in the positive direction, also known as the parasympathetic nervous system, toward open, full breath and flow and relaxation, or it's in the negative direction, also known as sympathetic, toward constriction, shallow breath, tightness, and stress. Another thing I need to point out is that energetically, the in-breath is fortifying. It builds energy. While the out-breath, exhalation, releases energy. That's letting go. This may seem obvious, but when you extrapolate that out to the bigger picture, you see that people who have a hard time letting go of emotions, of things, of relationships, of weight, probably don't breathe out enough. And this has consequences for your health on all levels. So, for example, asthma is a condition, a breathing pattern where you don't exhale all the way, so your lungs still have stale air that's depleted of oxygen. It feels like you can't breathe in enough, but the problem is that you haven't breathed out enough first to make room for the new oxygenated air. I haven't seen a study on this, but I have a theory that hoarders have difficulty exhaling. I know I have a hard time letting go of things and people, and I had asthma as a kid. And I'm gradually teaching myself to exhale more consciously more of the time. And I'm gradually finding it easier to let go generally. Also, as I practice consciously exhaling fully, I find it easier to let go of extra weight. It's a feedback loop that goes both ways. You think breathing's connected with everything in ways that the more you pay attention to it, the more you'll feel. Since it's late for many of you, if we do too much more breathing work, you might want to just go to sleep. So for the rest of the talk, if you can, just leave one hand on your belly and keep a little bit of your awareness, maybe 20% on your breathing, just for practice. You don't have to do anything other than that, but not have all your focus here in front of you on the screen, just a little bit back on you inside. That would be good practice. Another trick is to build resets into your day. There are pauses, there are transitions that you can use to stop the mind's stranglehold on your life energy. When you're stopped at a traffic light, say, throw out your belly and take a deep breath or two. This will pull energy out of your head and circulate it back into your body where it belongs. Or when you close an app on your phone, you can program that in to be when you close your app, take a conscious breath. You want to build the habit of checking in with your body, up into your head, focus outward, come back in, focus inward, out and in. When you stand up to go somewhere, feel your legs and the physicality, the reality of your body, instead of just being theoretically out about what you're about to do. This resets the flow of energy. And as you do this throughout the day, you wind up feeling more energized and less drained. And it's free and it's easy and nobody even knows you're doing it. It's completely win-win. We can't talk about the issues in your tissues without understanding that breathing is the mechanism that moderates the emotions in your body. It's all connected. The cycle is thought produces an emotional response, which becomes a physical response. And the movement is toward increased or decreased well-being, depending on how you're spinning it. Breathing, the movement of chi or life force energy, is the vehicle or mechanism for all of it. Here's an example. Imagine you're unexpectedly called into your supervisor's office and you're told that you're fired. That's an event. It's a fact. Now let's say you love your job and you expected to be there for many more years. Your thought would be, oh, this is bad. Maybe the next thought is about financial hardship and then fear, or maybe someone sold you out and you feel betrayed or angry. Your breath will get shallower, your muscles will tighten, maybe your throat constricts, your stomach starts to feel bad, and the negative thoughts snowball as you head down that fight or flight rabbit hole. Okay, that's a stressful scenario. Take a breath. Now, imagine that unexpected call into your supervisor's office, and let's say that you don't love your job. You've been thinking of making a change. Your first thought is, this could be good. Now, maybe I can get unemployment, maybe even a severance package, and that'll give me time to get a better job. You feel maybe relief, hope, maybe even joy. Your breath deepens, your chest expands, maybe you smile. And now you're deepening into the parasympathetic nervous system. The external event is exactly the same, but you can see how the story you spin makes your response completely different depending on the thoughts that the event triggers. The thought to emotion to physical response cascade is so lightning fast you don't even notice it. But with some conscious attention, you can slow it down and feel the connection. You can feel your body constrict. You can feel things tightening down or opening up, and how that cascade plays out in your body. After a physical event, say you throw your back out, you can rewind the tape to the events and the thoughts leading up to the event and the emotions you were feeling just before you threw out your back. It can be very telling. That's how when you think, oh, this just happened, usually it's not this just happened. Usually when something happens, like I know a piano mover who moved pianos for 20 years with never a back problem. And he came to me having thrown out his back for the first time and he didn't really know how to handle it. And we unwound it back to, what were you going on? I said, yeah, I was really starting to be sick of my job. It's like, yeah. So then your back responds and helps, supports the thoughts and what it thinks you're asking it to do. Get me out of this job. Your body is where the aliveness is, and also where old repressed emotional energy is. That's why it might feel scary to go in there. It's like, I think of the monsters in your closet actually live in your body until you release them. Ours is not a culture that teaches us to recognize and value our emotions. In fact, we're often taught to suck back tears, choke down anger, and stuff down fear. But once you see how self-destructive this stuffing down is, and how simple it is to let that energy just flow through you without attaching more story, you can start deconstructing that lifetime of accumulation. And people lose weight doing this. So where does that unreleased, unexpressed energy go? Into your body, into your shoulder, into your hips, into your lungs. Your body has its own system of storing energy, and it accumulates until it can be released. The good news is that your body is willing to heal you at any moment to the best of its ability, even after decades. You can smoke for 50 years, and the day you stop, your body will start detoxifying your lungs. It's kind of a miracle. It doesn't really hold grudges. You can hold resentment for 7 decades, and the moment you actually forgive yourself, your parent, your spouse, there's an opening, a release, and energy starts flowing through and out. Your deepest natural impulse is toward health and life and love. But the release can't be just a thought in your head. You also have to feel the physical sensation, even if it's subtle. And then you know it's happened. It's kind of it's irrefutable once you feel it. Over my years of working with people and their bodies, I noticed that I said the same things to almost everyone, regardless of age, education, even level of health and fitness. Everyone needs to expand their breath. Everyone has lost at least partial connection with the wisdom in their body. And I realized I needed to say this to a broader audience than I could reach through just individual sessions. When I started working on my book, this is what it looks like, Issues in Your Tissues. I don't know if it's in the thing. Explaining my concepts was mostly an uphill battle. People were reluctant to go inward and feel the connection between their thoughts and feelings and physical condition. But here you are. You're at least curious about the emotional energy you carry, and you might already realize that there's a connection between stuffed down emotions and your physical ailments. That's why you're here. But still, you may have trouble applying this understanding to yourself. Sometimes it's the body itself that insists that you look at your issues. Maybe like many of my clients, you've already gone to various doctors without getting answers about your physical problems. Maybe you've seen a naturopath or done psychotherapy, chiropractic, or acupuncture, and still your symptoms persist. It's that frustration or desperation is actually a gift. If it drives you to try things that you might not otherwise try, that's where someone out of the box like me comes in. And there's a lot of us out there. You just have to look. My work is about helping people make conscious connections in the body to feel them viscerally and allowing the energy to flow. What I do is not strictly physical. It's not just in the mind. It's both, just like it is in us. You have to feel what I'm talking about. You can't, but you can do it with or without help. It's simple and it's quick when the connection happens, but it often takes a journey to prepare yourself to be willing to open, because there's old habits about like, oh, it's too big for me. It's too scary. But when you were 6, you had one capacity, and now as an adult, you actually have more understanding and tools and resources to get to that, to be able to handle those perhaps big emotions. If you're drawn to this subject, you're probably already on a healing journey, and you just have to keep going, potentially for the rest of your life. Having breathing tools and someone to guide you through the rapids makes the journey a lot smoother. Now, shifting to the body's perspective, pain is communication. Pain is your friend. Most likely your body's been trying to get your attention about something with gentle sensations that may be uncomfortable but aren't painful, like those tight neck and shoulder muscles at the end of the day. But eventually, if you don't adjust your self-care or your relationship or whatever's causing the discomfort, your body will have to turn up the volume of sensation. In other words, it will increase the discomfort or the pain, even to the point of pain, until you pay attention, until you do something to fix the problem. It's like the kid nagging at you, mom, until, or knocks over a vase or breaks something until you pay attention. What I'm advocating here is building a relationship with your body so that it doesn't have to scream at you with pain and these other debilitating symptoms. You want to start listening now before your body gets desperate and the damage gets any worse. You don't want your finger to hurt when you jam it or your ankle not to hurt when you twist it. The pain signals, don't use this. Give it a rest. Let it heal. If you keep walking on a twisted ankle, you're likely to cause more damage. Same thing with gut distress and any other physical symptom. The tricky part can be figuring out what your body's telling you with that symptom there. But that's the healing journey. You got to keep going until it's resolved, and then probably something else will come up. But that's the joy of it. You get to places, you get to a place where it's better. And sometimes with my clients, I say, well, what about that thing that the jaw problem that they came in initially for? It's like, oh, I haven't even thought about that. That's gone. It's gone. You're just on to the next. That's the journey. And the healing journey yields up precious gifts if you pay attention to them. I can't emphasize this enough. Your body is your greatest ally. It's with you from your first breath to your very last. More than any mother, any car, any spouse, any child, it's always doing its best to keep you healthy to the best of its ability, given the conditions it faces. So now let's get into some specifics about emotions that get stuffed down. Most people are shut down in some ways, but not others. Some can cry easily, but have trouble laughing openly. Others can vent anger, but not sadness. Those of us acculturated as female tend to be we're allowed to cry or be sad or afraid, but we're often shamed for strong emotions like anger or for assertive or self-empowered behavior. It's not uncommon for women to be afraid of their own anger. And as women, we're told, be nice or be a good girl. We may feel it's not safe to express anger or even feel angry. Maybe you got the message growing up that if you get mad at someone, they'll abandon you or stop loving you. So you wind up with access to part of the emotional spectrum, but not all of it. And the male acculturation has access typically to a different subset of emotions. Males are taught to show strength. They're allowed anger and expressions of dominance, but sadness, fear, and vulnerability tend to be seen in our culture as weak or unmanly. Boys are taught to suck it up, be strong, don't be a crybaby. But this is harmful because we all naturally feel the full range of emotions. We just need to feel safe feeling and expressing them. Brene Brown has been wonderfully articulate about how our culture shames our emotional responses and discourages vulnerability. I've left some resources with resource references with Betsy. The point is, regardless of which emotions are stuck, we all wind up emotionally congested with access to parts of the emotional spectrum, but not all of it. That means each of us has work to do to reclaim those lost or buried feelings and ultimately those lost parts of ourselves. That's where thoughts about needing to find yourself come from. You're not your full, authentic self if you can't feel and express all of your emotions. Carl Jung talks about the shadow self, which are the parts of your authentic self that have been driven underground into the shadows. Shadow work involves reclaiming and showing love to those lost parts that your parents or teachers or society told you were not acceptable or safe to show. So where specifically does that stuffed energy go in the body? The body has its own logic for how it manages this kind of thing. On the right side, you'll find mental, yang, masculine energy or issues as the shake hand side. This is the sword arm. The left side tends to hold or express feminine energy, female emotions. The yin side, the receptive side, think shield arm. The action, the emotions are, even if you're left-handed, it's still going to be like this to some extent. At the front of your shoulders, press right now. Take your finger and press into the front of the knob of your shoulder. Is it sore? Try the other side. Any difference between the two sides? These are where I have found resentful thoughts, resentful feelings. And believe me, there are people who have no soreness in either one. There's people with very specific soreness in one side or the other. And there's plenty of people with some soreness in both. Mother issues tend to be on the backside. If that's where you tend to keep your stress, it's either you and your mother, you in your role as mother, or perhaps you in a caregiving or mothering role. Father issues tend to be on the pecs. I think of a gorilla banging their chest. This is where, I'm rubbing here and I'm asking people what's coming up as we're working in this area. And it almost always is about them and their father, or them as father. Grief is associated with the lungs, fear in the belly, anger in the thumb, jaw, and liver. This is all the points along the liver meridian. Joy or lack of joy in the hips. I have articles about this on my website, healingcatalyst.com. You can also look at Chinese medicine charts for the organs and the emotions associated with them. Louise Hay has a great book. This is an old book, but a goodie. You Can Heal Your Life. She has a marvelous body part checklist with associated issues and affirmations that you can use to shift the energy in there. I use lists like hers and Chinese organ lists as a starting point for further investigation. Human bodies speak pretty much the same language, but we all each have our own local dialect, if you will, based on our families and our acculturation. So I recommend starting with one of those lists and adjust your investigation to what feels true for you. Like try it on. Like she says, ankles are about this. Try that on. If it's, go from there. It's a start to start your investigation. And understand that there are layers. Core wounds are the deepest wounds, and they often happen early in life, like adoption, right? That initial loss and abandonment is deep. And any subsequent loss or abandonment will ping or accumulate in that same area. Parental abuse is especially confusing because it comes from the person or people who are supposed to be the source of safety, protection, and love. And children usually can't understand and hold that contradiction. So they internalize the blame and make themselves be the problem. Unfortunately, this often fits with the need of the abusive adults to displace blame onto them. But for a child, taking blame for abuse onto yourself, saying, I'm a bad person and I deserve this treatment, is a more powerful position than being the helpless victim of irrational adults that you have no control over. That's actually scarier. That, wow, there's nobody here who's got it together. As little kids, we don't have the maturity to understand that, yes, mom loves me, and she's wounded and sometimes behaves badly from that wounding. So we stuff down those hurt negative feelings, that confusion, and keep stuffing down any others that we can't digest until we have an undigested glob of emotional energy that eventually resurfaces as digestive issues or an autoimmune condition or even cancer. This is my tangible metaphor for the tangle of thoughts and feelings that accumulates over time from abuse or neglect or trauma and the stress and restrictions of everyday life. Imagine that you've sucked you swallowed these down or stuffed them down bead by bead or necklace by necklace. And some of them may not even belong to you. You just swallowed, your dad's philosophy about this whole, or your mom's attitude about or her shame whole. And the tangle can get pretty big. But as you come to know what to look for, it gets easier to untangle. It's like you can't pass it out in this condition. You can't throw it up in this condition. You have to do some work to untangle it and make it manageable. It takes a little time, a little attention, but I've seen even big tangles resolve pretty quickly with the right willingness and support. You get the full discussion of this in my book. Chapter 1 is called Breathing Like You Mean It. There's a chapter about stress, your bodies know, and a chapter on intuition. There are cartoons and stories and very effective exercises if you actually do them. I'm looking at the time and we're about halfway through. What do you think, Betsy? Do we want to start questions? Do we have more coming in, or should I keep talking?
Yeah, we've got some questions. So let me start with the ones that came in with registration. I think you touched on this a little bit. Do you want to talk more about how some of these issues can affect somebody's weight or cause weight gain?
Okay.
Or did you?
It's a complex question, but I would say I would look first to issues of self-worth and worthiness. and also safety and trust. I mean, eating patterns are modeled by the family. Comfort food is called that for a very good reason, right? You know, you have some stress and you eat to somehow feel better. But the tricky part is you have to eat to live. Even, you know, when eating becomes an addiction and it becomes your go-to as opposed to a drug or alcohol or the other things that we go to when we feel bad, it's tough to untangle what's necessary eating and what's, you know, addictive eating. I think the work to be done is in the realm of self-acceptance and love. The more you love yourself and your body, the more you want to give yourself the best self-care, the best food you can afford, and the best exercise. Tom Rogat explained this last week in his talk. He said the self-esteem of an adoptee takes a brutal hit with the idea, I must not be worthy of being kept. And then you add life's other cruelties on top of that initial wound, and you have a recipe for feeling unworthy even of your own self-care. So, but you know, we're really resilient and our bodies are responsive. And as you start changing feelings about yourself, your body will respond. And as you just move the ball in a positive direction and have the patience you would for a growing plant, you start to heal. Permanent weight loss takes time, but as you feel good about doing it, you feel good about yourself, and it sort of snowballs again in that pause and get the energy moving. You just got to start slowly. You want to show your body the same love and support and trust that a wise parent would give to a beloved child. And one question to ask yourself is, am I treating the body the way I would if I completely loved it and accepted it unconditionally? If not, why not? That's something to ponder deeply.
Thanks. The other question that we got ahead of time is how are emotions covered up through the adoptive family?
Oh, God, some meaty questions. Well, many families have secrets, and some families have a lot of secrets. Adoptive parents may have shame around not being able to conceive. There may be familial pressure to carry on the family line. They may have been told difficult background stories, whether they're true or not, about the birth parents or about the child's early life, and want to protect the adoptee from that knowledge. If the adoptive parents choose not to tell the adoptee that they're adopted, and many parents are advised to do this for all kinds of reasons, that can start a whole cascade of lies and half truths to cover the real story. And that goes hand in hand with covering up difficult emotions like shame or insecurity or sadness, or even anger for having to lie about any of this stuff that go with the true story. Another aspect is that there's often an unconscious fear that the child may be taken away, especially if parents come to adoption after miscarriages or other child death. There's often unresolved fear of further loss. And in the adoption process, maybe they had to make the case that they would be ideal parents just to get the child in the first place. And then when they're less than ideal, I know, like human, regular parents, they may feel exposed as frauds. They may fear that the child will eventually find the birth parent or parents and prefer them. In my case, my mom was a social worker, mainly CPS, but she also worked in adoption for many years. And she understood in her mind that I had a lot of unanswered questions about where I came from. But when I found my birth mother, she tried to be happy for me. But despite all of her training, she was terrified. She knew my birth mother was nearly 20 years younger and probably skinnier, and all of her personal insecurities as a person and a woman came roaring to the surface. You know, birth parents and adoptive parents are regular human beings with lineage trauma and shame and insecurities and their own shadows. So all of this, so these adoption story details are in addition to the stresses and issues of non-adopted life. So I would say that an adoptive family may have more secrets, but may have less. I mean, it depends on the whole package.
Thank you. Since you did such a nice job with that question, let me just throw in another one if you want to comment. What about birth parents? Like, how do you think this plays out specifically for birth parents?
that was what I
When you were talking about adoptive family, you know, the adoptee and the
oh, birth
adopted
parents.
parents.
Oh, what emotions are we covering up? I've just read Ann Fessler's book, and I read a number. There's in my resource references. There's Ann Fessler's nonfiction book about what birth mothers are have gone through, and the shame. I mean, the shame and the secrecy before, especially before abortion was legal. Before Roe versus Wade, there was so much shame and so much ignorance. A lot of young mothers weren't told what they were going to go through, and they were shamed for having gotten pregnant, and they were often confused. Those books really talk about the issues very well. I did meet my birth mother, and I learned some of her issues, but I would say that in her particular case, her parents were abusive. They were both deaf, and she was an only child, and there were a lot of control dynamics. And so the adoption and the shame, and she was sent away to Cleveland to keep everything secret. And the tangle was so dense to begin with, and the adoption issue and the adoption story just made everything worse, just made everything more intense and painful. Made the wounds bigger. So the way our society has handled adoption I'd say in the 20th century caused a lot of damage, caused a lot of wounding, and the Cleveland Adoption Network is doing a tremendous job to facilitate conversation about this, and to, again, this untangling maybe you weren't seeing me doing this. This is my tangle. I have to lift it up higher, but untangling this stuff and seeing what's the family of origin, what's the adoptive family, and it's a process. It is a healing journey. I've been on it for pretty much my whole life, and I feel like I've got a lot of it resolved, but stuff keeps coming up. So I really for birth mothers, if they haven't read those two books that are in the resources, I recommend those two, because they nail pretty much all the issues that I'm aware of.
Thank you. I'm going to try to do this question justice. It's a little long. So the end of the question gets to what the question is. So let me read that part first, and then I'll give you the context. So this person is asking if there's any tips to help him bring along himself in this situation, that socializing and speaking in front of people is difficult for him and seizes him up. So he starts out saying, it feels like all the damage my nervous system has taken over decades feels hopeless. Deep, deep neural pathways. It's a matter of practice, practice, practice with the breathing and changing narrative around experiences, self-compassion. So any tips to help him further his journey?
Tips. It sounds like you're on the right path. I mean, you're aware of the issues, and it is practice. I think a coach, a speaking coach, especially if you're speaking about these issues, which are going to be in your mind and kind of up as you speak, it can be really cathartic and really an important, like the way stand-up comics often use autobiographical information. It's part of a way of working it through. So I'm not sure whether this person is speaking about these issues or just speaking in general, and he's worried about those self-esteem issues getting in the way. Is that mentioned at all?
I read what was there.
Okay. See, to me, those would be two kind of different paths that you go on. Whether if you're speaking about those issues, then I would recommend doing a whole lot more therapy and deep work. I mean, because again, speaking about it is going to help it out, but you also want to come across well and be articulate, not seize up. So practice, practice, practice. I'm not sure that was anything really new and different, but there's no magic pill. It's practice.
That's validation that he's on the right track. So that's good. We also had a participant asking if this type of pain gets passed down generationally, so intergenerational trauma.
that's actually the book that I'm working on next. Absolutely. I feel that secrets have a lasting blueprint. What I see right now across ages, across like kind of species wide, human beings were working on what I think of as the badly crocheted scarf. You know, when you have these traditions that are handed down, it's like you're born and your family gives you these crochet needles or knitting needles and this thread and say, this is the family pattern, keep knitting, keep going. And I see people saying, not only is like, this is a crappy scarf, I'm going to yank this thing and unravel it, and I'm going to start knitting my own more healthy pattern. So yes, physically, I obviously, I don't have research to show this, but I believe that autoimmune problems are downline intergenerational results. That shame, things we don't talk about, the repression. I mean, I've worked recently with a woman who's came in with a uterine fibroid the size of a softball. And when we started looking into what that could be about, we found pretty quickly that her grandmother had had multiple miscarriages. Her grandmother had two, I don't remember the precise details, but like 2 children, and then 4 or 5 miscarriages. And then her mother was born, and then she had a couple more miscarriages. And her mother was born into this miasm of unprocessed grief. And the grandmother was experienced as a very cold and emotionally unavailable woman to her mother, and she experienced her mother same thing, as very shut down emotionally. And to me, as far as we could see, that was the locus of all of that energy, the grief and the issue, this fear. Just imagine carrying these babies, not with the fear that you were going to lose them again. And it happened again and again. And the grandmother had since passed, but the mom was still alive. And we did a healing and a forgiveness energetically with the grandmother. And it was really powerful. And as far as I know, her uterine, I don't know what, it shrank, it became less of an issue. And I don't know whether she passed it or whatever. I followed up enough to know that she was really happy. She was really not suffering anymore from it. And that it seemed like a really clear one. And the way I'm saying it sounds like, oh, it was so easy, but it was really clear. I mean, this woman came to me ready to deal with it, and the energy was ready to involve. It was just kind of like yanking on that scarf to let it go up.
We have someone posting a comment that kind of dovetails, I think, with what you were saying, that unfortunately she thinks that adoptees get their bio family trauma in their cells, and then also get their adoptive family trauma through the nurturing or sometimes lack of nurturing in the adoptive family.
Yep, I would say that's probably true. I've been my experience, but I also think that I personally believe that we're up to it on some level, but I believe in soul contracts and soul agreements, that I took this on, and I haven't quite untangled how this all works. Like, why would I take all this on? But one thing that's super curious to me is that when I found my birth father 4 years ago, he's a narcissist. And my first husband was a narcissist, and I didn't understand how, from I don't know if you're familiar with imago theory, but it's Harville Hendricks says that we tend to choose partners who mimic and mirror our original caregivers, because we want to heal those wounds. If whatever they have, we choose a partner. Let's say some parent is an alcoholic. We're going to continue to choose alcoholics because we want to have them love us the way we want to be loved, or fix the situation. It may or may not happen, but that's the initial drive toward healing. And until I met my birth father, I couldn't understand why I would choose a man like that. And it was so deep. It was the imago pattern was playing out completely unconsciously. from those intergenerational patterns that clearly I was carrying. And in fact, when I met him, I looked just like him, and I speak like him. It's spooky to me. And I doodle like my birth mother. I never saw her doodle. And then my half sister saw me doodling and she said, that's just how our mother doodles. I don't understand how that works, but I can vouch that it does. So yes, we do have potentially 4 or even more lineages to unravel, but we also have potentially 4 gifts, strengths and gifts. And you know, and when you're talking about genetics, like, yes, maybe you have macular degeneration or cancer or something on two of your lines, but then you have the eating patterns from your adoptive family that maybe don't reinforce that. So I think conscious choice is your biggest ally. You can say, well, yes, that might be coming down the pike for me, or I can see that, but I choose to pivot. I choose to be kind. I choose not to be, as much as possible, not to be a narcissist, and to help other people rather than only focusing on myself. I mean, we all have a little bit of narcissism, but it's the more you're conscious and aware of these things, the more you can make conscious choices.
The person who posted that comment recommended the book It Didn't Start With You by Merck Wolin. So we'll put that also in we send an email if anybody's new to these talks. We'll send an email that lists all these different books and resources. And also that same person asked if you can please repeat, maybe a little slower, the 12 ways that emotion moves out of the body.
Oh, this is like
really quick.
listing the 7 dwarfs. I always don't get 6 of them.
As
So,
many as you can remember, just a little slower.
twitching, crying, farting, orgasm, peeing, pooping, any exodus of energy, flapping. I have it in my notes. I didn't write down all 12.
That's all right.
But I figure you get the gist. Is there one in particular you're wondering if this is a release? You can figure it out. I mean, release is shaking, quivering the muscles, yelling, anything that's movement, especially if you have a conscious connection to what you're doing, is cathartic. I also want to put in a plug for ritual. I think human beings are designed to do things with their body, to yell, dance, scream, all the things, to act out. And traditionally, we did this in a ritualized way. We danced, we sang with other people, or we ululated to express grief. And we don't do these in our Puritan society, right? We're so shut down, and we have to have these small little expressions. And I would like to see us act out a little bit more, obviously in controlled or in in safe ways. But I think that would be good for us as a people.
Thanks. I just posted your website. I'm not sure if it came through as an active link, but it's healingcatalyst.com, if anybody's wondering.
I still can't where I
So
said.
I had a question. If people are interested and would like to learn more about this, I know you give a lot of resources, but if they'd like to meet somebody in person, and you live in Hawaii and we're in other states, or some of us maybe in other countries, how would people go about finding someone who does this type of body work?
That is a question I've had for 20 years, and I don't know how to answer. I know that there are people who do work like this. People who touch the body tend to have that sensitivity. They're drawn to touching because they're already sensitive that way. I'm an emotional intuitive, and I can read emotional energy in the body, but people also develop that muscle becoming body workers. The trick, what I think is different about me, is that I have all these words. I mean, I'm very digital, and I read a lot and I write a lot, and I have words to translate it. So you might find a body worker who's extremely intuitive and who understands, can feel this stuff, but may not have all the words to talk about it. So use the word intuitive. If you're wanting body work, intuitive body work, ask for intuitive body work. I would hope that anybody who is intuitive, especially at this point in history, can own it. Do you know what I mean? It's not technical massage, massage licensing is fairly restrictive as far as I know in most states. So it's not something you advertise. If you work in a spa or an establishment, you're not really encouraged to be woo-woo and intuitive, but that's where the real healing work gets done. So there are healing networks. There's one on Maui. There's different national registries, but that's not necessarily, it might be a place to start. I'd use the internet. I'd search for the words intuitive, body work, healer, alternative healing. Unfortunately, it's really hard to find. Like, I have a Yelp listing, but there's no alternative category. The only category that I was allowed, that I could, that's even remotely close, is massage. And I don't want to advertise as massage. People sometimes want sex for that, and those are kind of icky calls, and that's not where I want to be listed. And also, people who do want straight body work, I'm doing something very different. I'm going to be talking about their emotions, and if they don't want that, they shouldn't come to me. So at this point, I would use your intuition. I've had people stop me on the street and say, I can tell. What do you do? And then I explain what I do. I just open your intuition and make a prayer and say, I want this healing work. Bring me somebody who can help.
Thanks. Yeah, I really enjoyed the stories in your book of, your book was filled with stories of people that you've worked with, and questions that you asked and things that opened up for them. And so that was really interesting for me, along with, and you talked about this a little bit, but the different areas of the body that you tend to see specific issues surface within. Somebody is asking if Holy Fire Reiki, I don't know how you pronounce that, Reiki, is similar to what you do.
I have had Reiki training. I've gone through all that, but like I said at the beginning, I'm not really interested in labels, because I understand Reiki, and I think if that's a tool that works for you, hallelujah. I think people can do amazing things with Reiki. People can do amazing things with any tool. And it's just a matter of what tool fits best in your hands, what you're most practiced with it. Yeah, I think anything can be great, and I think anything can be really bad. It's just a matter, the name Reiki doesn't mean good or bad, because you can have someone who has all the training in the world and they just don't have that gift. And you can have people, when I was in massage school, there were people who had no training and they were super adept and strong in their intuitive powers and their healing powers. And there were people who went through the whole training and got their certificate, and ooh, I wouldn't want them touching me. It's just, you got to feel it. You have to take the chance and try.
Thanks. Just to let people know, I'm going to be putting in the chat a very brief survey that you can tell us your thoughts about this evening. You can tell us ideas that you might have for future sessions. So you can take a look at that. And we probably have time for maybe one more question. It's about 5 to 9. Anybody have a burning question that hasn't been brought up yet? Or Denise, do you have anything that either that people often ask or that you think would be of specific interest to this group?
I guess the thing I want to make sure I've underlined a million times is not to be afraid to feel in your body. Understand that your body is your greatest ally. It's your vehicle for this whole life. And the more you listen and inquire within, the more it will communicate with you in its language of sensations and symptoms. And it will help you take care of yourself and feel your best if you let it. It's a relationship to develop. And you get amazing results. I love bodies. That's why I do what I do. I really have a respect and admiration for how they're willing to heal. Yeah, even after you've abused them, they'll still heal you. If you give your body, just right now, just give your body a thank you for carrying it through all the things it's carried you through. It's just amazing. That's huge.
I'm
Thank you.
curious how many people thought about the breathing and keeping a hand on your belly and thinking every so often about how you were breathing. I found myself, it came to mind once or twice while you were talking, but it's hard to keep that 20% of my energy focused on that as well.
Yeah, try breathing at stoplights. I've had a lot of people give me feedback about, wow, that really works. It just starts opening up the
Yeah,
energy. Yeah,
those natural pauses in the day.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
great. Well,
Thank
thank you so much, Denise. I know that everybody here got a lot out of it. You're getting lots of thanks in the chat as well. Um, You can check out our schedule for upcoming Monday evening speakers. Thanks to everybody who joined us this evening, and to Denise for volunteering her time. As many of you know, Adoption Network Cleveland is a nonprofit organization. We're membership based, and we can continue doing our programs if you help support us. So if you're interested in joining, you can check out our website, adoptionnetwork.org, which I posted specific pages on a couple times this evening already. So we hope to see you again soon at this or one of our other programs. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
you.